So I had a nice talk on stress and anxiety and why it's all a bit silly, prepared, but just ran into a friend and it triggered a bit of a rant in the corridor, which I think I will now try and share with you about essentially corporate innovation. So why do corporate initiatives never work? And by working, the way I'm defining that is that it needs to be a self-sustainable business. So obviously, you can pump millions into marketing, making a cool new brand, getting it out there, getting some traction. But unless that thing stands on its own over the long term, then I do not define that as success. So why do corporate initiatives never work? Essentially, it comes down to culture and the nature of innovation nowadays. So innovation is an inherently uncertain thing. Everything is uncertain when you start a new venture and you're doing something entirely new. So you simply don't know what you're doing. Like, you have to accept. This is why there's 43% of entrepreneurs suffer from mental health problems. Because you have to accept that you do not know what you're doing. And a topic for next week I can talk about will be sort of how to manage that, how to manage anxiety and that uncertainty in a way that is constructive. But for today, I just want to focus on the phenomenon of failed corporate initiatives. So, because you don't know what you're doing, because you are building a new thing, and there's you can have examples that are similar, but essentially it's like new market, new problem, and essentially you're trying to find a solution for this problem you've identified, and maybe that changes as you get more information. And as the context changes, you need to sort of learn how to not drift with it, but make strategic moves in the direction that will essentially get you to building a profitable, self-sustainable business. So the problem there is that it makes it difficult anyway to innovate, right? That's why there's a huge failure rate, partly because it's all new. So you're answering so many core assumptions. Like, as I said, who are you building? Sorry, what is the problem? Who are you even building it for? And then what are you actually building for them? And finally, can you actually make money from that? So you're really dealing with complete uncertainty. And the problem is that traditionally companies have what we call a waterfall approach, where guys at the top, are sort of, the way I think of this is sort of like Jedi Council, right? Or at least they think they are. The way they think is that, okay, well, we know everything because we're at the top, so let's sit in our nice mahogany chairs, and it's pretty uncomfy, mahogany table, nice comfy chairs, and plan the future because we know exactly what people need, right? So they sit there and say, okay, we're going to build this, let's build a team to actually get it out there, right? And the problem there is obviously that a huge amount of products are launched this way. Waterfall, again, Jedi Council determining what everyone wants, what the customer wants. They launch it and then it's like, well, shit, we built the wrong thing. Nobody wants it because we never bothered to validate whether there was a problem there in the first place, whether our solution solved that problem and whether it was actually good enough to solve the problem, get the customer to come back, and then obviously get the customer to pay for it. And we're seeing, again, I work in a big co-working here with a lot of corporate initiatives. Nobody seems to be making progress on anything, because what happens is you have this team of innovators. So you get the sort of young, enthusiastic startup types coming in without this residual traditional culture, traditional waterfall culture, right? Just saying yes to whoever's above them, agreeing with them, whatever. Not really. Sorry, that wasn't clear. Essentially, you have these young, entrepreneurial types who are purpose-driven and sort of understand that they need to apply a lean, agile process, right, and adapt as we go. But they come into conflict with the residual culture of the corporation, which says, no, we're up here and we know what you need to build, so just build it. Don't come back and try and change our plan, because we've told our boss this, we've said exactly what we're going to build, we need to deliver something to the board, etc., etc. They promise them something they can't deliver on because they think that the world is certain and they think that the outcomes are certain. So whatever happens, even if you have a very good team of intrapreneurs, again, startup within a corporation, what happens is they are pushed to deliver immediate results because the corporation says, look, here's a few million, we need you to build a product that makes money, like in some way. And what happens is then obviously the startup team comes to the whoever's sort of managing them and says, okay, well, we haven't delivered a profitable business, but here are the learnings we've had along the way, right? So year one, if you've discovered who your market is, what the specific problem is, and you've built an early solution, what we can call a minimal viable product, just sort of basic solution that's telling us we're going in the right direction, like that's a very good place to be, and that's the natural progression when it comes to building, moving towards building a profitable product-based business. But what happens is then the Jedi Council, that makes them sound good. The corporate guys come in and essentially say, well, but what do you mean? Like, you've got learnings. That doesn't mean anything for us because we need to say, you're hitting your revenue targets or you're not. So you have this clash of culture where the nature of innovation, at least with digital products, is this very fast, very iterative, i.e. we learn and we use that learning to feed back into our decisions so that we gradually progress towards building a profitable product business. As I said, these initiatives are almost always, every single case I've heard of, I'm not an expert in this area, but I have a lot of stories of this happening, a lot of people I've met in Berlin, whenever they see potential in a product, it's shut down because, again, they're speaking different languages. The old school culture comes in and says you need to deliver revenue. The modern, correct, agile or lean approach of learning is a different language because you are showing progress when you're innovating in a sort of modern, agile way, but because it's not clear, easy, understandable revenue goal, it doesn't mean anything to the other person, right? And we're seeing, the beginning of it now, obviously, is where corporations are trying to adapt, but completely failing. Volkswagen, who never fired people, like they literally never fired people, I think just got rid of 10 or 20% of their workforce because they are not able to catch up with people like, Uber, whatever. They're not able to move towards sort of self-driving cars and communally owned cars. So they know they need to innovate and they're putting billions into these initiatives, but they are shooting themselves in the foot by, trying to build innovation hubs, let them grow, and then when there's any potential, they come in and shut it down because they try and micromanage it, and again think that they know best about these things. So what can you do in a situation, and this is applicable to other companies as well, not just corporates, it's easy to sort of slag them off, but what can you do if you are in a company where you are unable to innovate in a way that you know is best, right? i.e. not waterfall, agile or lean approach where you're learning your way, you're progressing gradually by answering sort of key assumptions underpinning your work, right? Again, moving towards like, who is our market? What's the problem we're solving? What solution should we offer? Are people going to use that solution? Will they pay for that solution? And to be honest, the only conclusion I can draw is because traditional culture, the residue of it is so strong, however much training, however much, learning, however many examples you might provide, inherently the structure of an old company, it is so ingrained in the informal structures, i.e. how people deal with each other, right? Again, it's all about politics and getting a pay rise rather than how can we get to the truth, how can we build the best solution possible. So those informal structures which sort of disincentivize people finding the best solution, and formal structures where, again, it's micromanaged. So it shouldn't be the case that the people at the top that are detached from the new initiative, innovation hub, etc., those things need to be separated. You can't have a traditional hierarchy because the guys at the top don't have a clue. They don't have a clue about what that team is trying to solve, what problem they're solving, what solution they offer, can they make money from it? And yet they're shutting down and slowing down innovation, dragging it through the mud. And that is really the reason why, to be honest, if you're in that situation, you have to leave, because are you going to change a corporation of 1,000, 10,000 people by yourself? No, even if you're in high level, get somehow into some high level role, then it's simply not going to happen. Can you change a culture of 4 or 5 people, 10, 20 people? Yeah, absolutely. Be charismatic, come in with good ideas, show evidence of that. But you're really fighting an uphill or impossible battle when you try and change a mammoth organization which moves slowly, which pushes back, which resists change as much as possible. And the other solution really is, you can, if you want to, you can try and obviously demonstrate or teach. Always better to show by example, like how you are actually making progress and showing some sort of metric they can understand. And here's where I'm going to shamelessly push you towards the book, because there's section 3 in the book I'm launching in June is basically about this process of how do you define a clear vision, how do you define a strategy, vision being your goal on the horizon, right? How do you then define strategies to help you get there? But importantly, how do you change and adapt as those strategies are working or not working? But briefly, what we want to do here is show, be able to show, which I can do in a coming article actually, how do you show somebody, your boss or this corporate manager coming in, how can you show them progress? Really the only way is, again, to show that you have a clear strategy that you're running, that you have a clear metric to measure whether that strategy is working or not. For example, say our vision is to, with my company Scribe, it is to reduce anxiety, essentially. Currently, we assume that building a desktop writing app is a strategy that will provide value to users that they pay for and that reduces anxiety. Currently, that strategy is working. We're in progress with it. So we can show a metric of paying users who get value from the product, i.e. solves their problem, i.e. reduces anxiety. So if you can show that metric, and again, it doesn't need to be revenue, is it retention? It's like, hey, people aren't paying for it yet, but you can see with this graph that they are starting to use it more. And that means we're not far off being able to charge for it. So I think just showing some sort of progress and setting a clear expectation, saying, at the moment we're just trying to retain more users. I get them to use it more and more regularly. But the next step is to start charging. And then you're putting it in someone, business terms, right? People can understand, okay, cool, there's, it needs to be relatively good before we're actually able to charge it. But as I said, I go into detail with that in the book. But generally, if you're working in a entrepreneurial thing or innovation hub, if you are seeing your venture shut down, then I think ask yourself whether it is the best use of your time and skills to continue hitting your head against the wall. That's it. See you next week.